Hamilton M., a man who's dear to my heart and in my prayers for years now. I love you.
Got a stool up here they kind of lean back on a little bit. I'm not special, it's just that I need it. My name's Hamilton and I'm an addict. If that's too much of a mouthful for you, they call me Ham. And I used to think that that's why I used my name was Hamilton Osborne Moorhead. I felt like a round peg in a square hole anyway, and when they put that name on me, I just, man. So I've heard them all: ham and eggs, ham hocks, ham and bacon. Anything you can think of, I've heard it. They say that anything that a person can think of in all the years that human beings has been on this earth, somebody has done it. So that's kind of a trip, because I've thought of some really weird stuff. I said, no, probably somebody has. I want to thank the convention committee for asking me to come down here and share part of my life with you. And I also want to say that this has been a very, very special convention. I've been to a lot of them. And I'm not blowing smoke. I'm saying it. That's the way it is. That's the way I felt. The people that had shared here, and Bob put it very appropriately last night when he shared that the honesty and the feelings that people have talked about here, and talking about the 12 steps, and talking about love, and talking about service, and what we become, when we finally put down the drugs and we start working 12 steps, the type of people we become with character and integrity and all the things, man, that, maybe probably was hiding in there someplace, but we just couldn't dig it out when we were using. And we become those people when we get here. And, and the people on the convention committee and the people of Las Vegas, you've been just great to us, and I just want to thank you very much for that. There's a lot of birthdays this month. My sponsor, one, who I've known for 30 years, him and I go back. We were in the same dorm together in the penitentiary. When he talks about how crazy he was, didn't believe him. Because he's mellowed quite a bit. He'd probably get mad for me saying that, but he's mellowed. One time I looked at him a couple of months ago and I told him he mellowed, and he said, "You think I'm getting weak?" He said, "Oh, you think you can run games on me now?" And I said, "You just mellowed." Because I've seen him do and say things, man, to people that, they went the other way. And people just kind of steered a large, long path around him, because he was a pretty dangerous individual. So, but he came from a childhood that, not to be sharing his inventory, but that was very damaging and very rough. And for him he's such an inspiration to me, because he's come to a place now where he has the information, and he didn't get the information by just pulling it out of the air. He has the information from experience, and everything that he's talked to me about, and everything that he's told me about, and any suggestions he's ever made to me were all things that he's experienced. And I've asked him, I said, "Did you experience this?" And he says, "Well, how could I be telling you about it if I didn't experience it?" And then he would share some things with me that made me feel like, hey, I'm not alone here, And I think that's that's like a big keynote to Narcotics Anonymous. We're not alone. We have people in our lives. We have fellowship, and we gain incredible friendships here. And doesn't matter what drugs you used or what you did. It makes no difference. All it is that there's a common thread that binds us all together, and that's that we're all have this dilemma, this thing, and it's a disease. And it wants only one thing for us, and that's to put you 6 feet under. And as soon as it can do that, it has victory. It's happened in my family. It's happened in my wife's family. The disease has been victorious there. It's been victorious in many of my friendships, over the years. And I'm sure that if we could all stand up, because we've all known somebody that's died from this hideous thing, And I just want to let you know, man, that the longer you're clean, sometimes we get into working and making money and doing all the things that people do when we work and make money and get into life, is that sometimes, man, we start to look at the disease like a common cold. And don't be mistaken, because that's exactly what he wants you to do. Take it light, everything's cool, and he just lays in the cut and waits for you. And as soon as you start to get a little bit neglectful, or a little procrastination slides in there, and you're not working the 12 steps. When I say you, I'm talking about me. When I'm not working the 12 steps, it starts yakking at me. Sometimes it yaks real loud, and sometimes it doesn't yak so loud. Depends on where I'm at with this program. I have 3 sponsees that having birthdays this month also, month of August. And they're not here, but, I congratulate them. And Bob B. is having a birthday this month. And I got to say this, is that Bob B. is the longest person in Narcotics Anonymous with the continuous service to Narcotics Anonymous there is. Anybody else stands up about it, it's bogus. He's an inspiration. He's a man with 36 years that he still has newcomers in tow. He talks to everybody at meetings. He's an example of this program, and he hasn't backstepped. He's always been there. When I was sick, he would call my house. My sponsor and Bob B. haven't forgot where they came from with the time they have, and there's other people in this room that haven't forgotten. And I just that's, if I can stress that, please don't forget where you came from. Don't forget that last day. Sometimes, when I've never been a spiritual speaker before. I never thought that I would be a spiritual speaker, because some of the, sometimes you think, you're supposed to be very humble, very this or very that, but I still get mad, and I still get angry, and and I still, stuff rolls around in my head, man, at a rapid pace, and I still pick up the phone damn near every day and call my sponsor, and we talk about it. I was talking to him about something yesterday, and he said, "Man, if you keep your mouth shut half the time, you'd be in less trouble half the time." So he keeps telling me the same stuff that he's been telling me for the last 15 and a half years. Me and Bob was on methadone together back in '71, and he got off methadone after 4 years, and I thought, is he crazy? This is like the most wonderful drug there. It's the only thing that can stop us from using. I didn't know anything, and I didn't know anything else. And Bob went to Narcotics Anonymous. 6 years later, Bob's dragging me into a meeting. And it's tough for me to stick around because it was very difficult for me to understand. Bob B. coined it pretty good last night. I could not understand how working 12 steps could take this obsession away from me. It was so thick, ran so deep in me that I thought that I'd really bought that ticket that I was going to die in some standard gas station or out on the yard, someplace under, some kind of cross, how they come down real quick. And so I finally threw my hat in the ring. And that's when things started happening for me around here. It has not been a cakewalk. Recovery has been a daily. I mean, I've had serenity here, but I haven't had. I can't say that I've been peaceful every day. There's always, my defects are so, in there that. And I have to work on them constantly, and it's like this disease is these defects go so far down to the marrow of my bones that, they dictate things, and I have to stay constantly vigilant and constantly conscious of how I do things. And when I first got here, I would run 4 or 5 months on a defect until Bob would say, "What are you doing?" And then I would snap to it, man, and that's how I became conscious of these defects, and by writing about them and by understanding the places that they take me, the disease doesn't have to have you taking drugs or sticking a needle in your arm. All it has to do is have you listen to those tapes in your head. If it can hold you for 2 or 3 days, that's 2 or 3 more days out of your life, man, that is just shot. Time is very important. I'm really getting very used to that feeling the last 6 months, how important time is. And maybe it was because I was very close to death, but I'm going to tell you something. Time is very important, and I'm not here to waste it anymore. I have to tell you about some of my upbringing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Billy said, oh, they're going to talk about their childhood. It looks like it's going to take about 45 minutes for that. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to run through real quick. But I came from a family that my brother and two other brothers, one is a drug addict, and my younger brother's a minister. Probably pretty good for him. He had to go to the ministry to try to settle some of all the mean shit that we used to do to him. He was much younger than us, and we used him like as a slave. And so my dad was quite old. He was born in 1877. I got to mention this is that he missed getting from Tucson, Arizona to Colorado on a horse, and missed the staging area by 1 day from riding with Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. He was too old to be drafted for World War I. That's how old he was. He was 70 years old when I was born, in the mid-40s. He was 76 when my younger brother was born, in 51. Got some strength in the family. You couldn't tell it right now, but I'm coming back, baby. So, me and my older brother, we were probably the only children in town that could probably destroy metal with our bare hands. We was destructive. We tore shit up. we'd light telephone poles on fire. We would light alleys on blazes. If we knew palm trees could burn the way they do, they would have been, because they had a lot of them in Long Beach. When we were kids, like 10 years old, we were pyromaniacs. We did things, man, that my dad would catch us, and he would whip that belt off in slow motion, because it'd take him about that long to get the belt off. Then he'd come around on the swing, and it's like it'd take him about 8 seconds to come, and you just, whoop, step out of the way. Would throw my little brother in the path, and he's going to kill me when he hears this tape, if he ever does. My mother was right out of the hills of Kentucky. Her mother died of appendicitis because they couldn't get her down from the hills in time to get her to the train station. And at the train station, they took her to the hospital. That's how far back in the woods they lived. And she died of appendicitis, and so I never knew my grandmother. And she was deaf mute. My mother was. And you better not call her deaf and dumb, because she could read lips. She would spit in your face. That's exactly what she would do. That's where. And I seen her do it twice. I said, "Ooh." She did it to a bill collector one time, and she did it to some guy that said, "Oh, she's deaf and dumb," and she spit right in their face. And so I always say that my mother couldn't hear us, and my father couldn't catch us. And that was so if you put your imagination together, and probably all I'm going to talk about my bringing childhood, other than we were kind of like street urchins. We had there was no guidance in the house. There was no parameters. There was nothing. It's like we just did what we wanted to do. We just did it. We scuffled, and if you went out in the backyard, man, you're liable to step on, there was boards and all kinds. It was a funky old house. And you would step on nails and shit, and the biggest thing I was always afraid of was getting lockjaw, because they always used to talk about lockjaw. A lot of you guys haven't heard of lockjaw. I used to think lockjaw, like like you can't close your mouth, or what if it locked closed? Would you be able to eat? Bob would have that answer. He'd be able to tell me something about it. Give me a suggestion on that. I don't think he ever had lockjaw, though. Anyway, but if you went out in my backyard, it was like something like that. You might wind up with lockjaw if you went out there with no shoes on. Anyway, we were just street urchins, man, and we hung out down at the place called, in Long Beach. We grew up in Long Beach, and they had a place called the Pike. And the Pike, in them days, man, that was a happening place, man. They had pimps, whores, they had sailors, Marines, and they had the corn dogs. You could smell the corn dogs and the shrimp. And they had a midway where they had the shooting galleries, where they'd shoot the 22s. In them days, shooting galleries, that was secret shit. And they had the Lido Ballroom, and they had all these places, and we just loved it down there. And I loved being around those kind of people. And we would harass the servicemen. We'd throw firecrackers and cherry bombs into the bars, and they'd come rolling out looking for us, and we'd all be gone. It was too small, and we'd head out, running down the midway. We knew everybody on the midway. We'd swim in the plunge, and I don't know, life was good. It almost makes my heart skip a beat just thinking about all the fun we used to have down there. But we used to get in some shit, and they'd be chasing us and all that, man, but it was just exhilarating, man. And I'd come home, and it would be quiet at home, real quiet, no communication at all. My mother didn't communicate. My father didn't really talk to us too much. He'd talk about Billy the Kid, and he'd watch TV and see a stagecoach and says, "That's bullshit." That's bullshit. He said, supposed to be 6 horses on there. You see how that guy's holding them reins? That's bullshit. And so that's all I knew about that. And then, but you know, it's like that's where I grew up, man. And we did anything we wanted to do, and we got our money any way we could. There wasn't any at home. If we were poor, I didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? The grass was high, and I didn't know that other people lived differently until I went into somebody else's house. And they had carpeting on the floor, and the little clock would be ticking, tick, 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 over in the corner, and it'd be nice and clean. And I thought, what is this shit? What is this? I'd never seen a house like this before. Ours was like linoleum floors, an old heater in the corner, concrete, and it was a different kind of place, just a different house. And grass was overgrown. The kids never mowed the lawn, so nobody else could mow it. My dad was too old. So that's how I grew up. My brother and I, as soon as we could, we got out of the house. And the closest place we knew to go to was the county of Los Angeles. And so we started going to jails a lot. And I watched my brother, and whatever he did, he was my God. And I would have gone that way anyway. It's just that he was my catalyst. And he set me up for the next thing. And he'd school me and told me how to act in there and all that. And that's what happened with that. And I just, him and I I took my first fix with him when I was 14. And in them days, man, it didn't come in balloons. They came in caps. And you get one for $3 or two for $5. And a quarter of a cap, him and I split it. And I was out back throwing up at 14 years old, hard, and he came up to me and he said, I'm going to give you some information. I said, what's that, bro? And he said, drink a Nesbitt's orange juice and it tastes just as good coming up as it does going down. Now that was some heavy shit. Because I knew I liked this, even though I was throwing up all over the place. And I was like, God, I don't know if I should be, feeling like sick like this and all this, but there was something else about it. There was something, man, that it took me out of this stuff. It's better than the Red Devils and better than that Rainier Ale that I used to drink. It just took me did something else to me. I knew that this baby was the one for me. And I pursued that for many, many years. And I pursued that first high for many years. I never could seem to get that one back. Not the way that one felt. And I spent a lot of time running the streets, and I learned how to steal, and I learned how to do all the things. Got married. Thought that was part of the man's thing to do when I was 18. Had 2 children, and both of us broke up with each other after a couple of years. And they were in foster homes. They come from a drug addict family, and they stayed in foster homes. She would drop them off at the babysitters just like I would have. If you think that I would have been different, I would have dropped them off at the babysitter and came back 6 months later and says, what do you mean, where are my children? Acting indignant because they gave them church social services or something. And they got used to seeing the inside of little juvenile halls and foster homes and at young ages. And there was nothing I could do about it. I would tell you, my children are the most important things to me in the world. My mother is the most important thing to me in my world. That was bunk. Most important thing to me in my world was me and getting loaded. After I dealt with that, then maybe I could deal with you in some kind of halfway effective means, and that would only last a few minutes. I just didn't spend much time with other people, and dealing with things. And so I came here very, very damaged in a lot of different areas. I had kind of set myself up, and I made my own survival skills. I came up, nobody told me how to do things. I used to read books a lot too. And I would make my I would make the character in the book me. And there was one book that I always loved, and it's a crazy name, but I'm sure some of you have heard it, Captain Horatio Hornblower. And the adventures of he was in the British Navy, and I would be Horatio, and they would be on the frigates and the man of wars, and they would be sailing the seas, man, and doing all their things, and he would always win. And he was a magnificent seaman, you know, and I loved that. I wanted, and I had a secret desire to go to Annapolis, and I never went. I never got into the service. They wouldn't take me. I started going to youth authorities, and in them days, we wore being drug addicts as a merit badge. I did, because you had the secret shit. There was very few people in my school or where I ran with or whoever I ran with. I mean, a small group of people that did drugs. I'm talking about 5, 6 guys. And nobody else was in on the secret, you know. And we became like, we separated, we were separatists. We separated ourselves from them because they were squares and they didn't have the secret. They didn't know how to do what we did. We stood different, we dressed different. We always had a crease in our pants. My mother worked at a laundry. She'd always crease my khakis for me, extra starch. And I'd have my French toes all shined up, man. And we just, you know, we had a certain style. And you can go all over the United States, and I know all over the world. If you want to find a drug addict, they all sit the same, they talk the same, and they look the same. Yeah, and they all bullshit the same, too. Just, it's like Bob said. So, you know, that was... So we came up in this, like, secret society. And it's not like that now. But we thought we knew something. And when we would go to jail, you know, it's like we would all pile up together. And... a lot of my friends, the guys that I grew up with, they're all dead. I've got two very, very close friends. One of them is doing 30 to life at Lompoc. He's 54 years old, and he's going to do all day. And I got another friend. He don't get out until 2011. He went on a tri-state bank robbery spree, shot somebody, and he's been down already 15 years, I think. But that's what happens to us, man. It says right in the White Book, I believe, that jails, institutions, and death. And that's exactly what happens to us. If you have any doubt, just read the book again. You know, ask anybody here, man. You know. I started to think about what spiritualism means. You can shotgun it out, and you come up with a lot of different stuff. Walking out in your backyard, looking at roses, and seeing like a blue jay fly through the air, and seeing a beautiful sunset, you know, and you get that, like that, wow, you know. I get that now. I never got it then. Everything was like black and white when I was using. It was like I was in black and white. There was no technicolor. Now it's like I see colors. You know, I see trees. They like shimmer. Things happen. I see bugs and birds, and I see things, man. And I didn't see them in them days, man. But I started thinking about spiritualism, what spiritualism is. I think the core, the very, very base of that is love. And then I think that moves on up to the next thing, and I think that's service. And then you can take it wherever you want to after that. But I think with those two things in hand, that's the meat of spirituality, I believe. It's written in all books. It's written in spiritual, very spiritual books. The Quran, the Eastern books, Western books, and they all talk about serving other people, serving your fellow man. And that's what this program's all about. You know, these are spiritual steps that all guide us to get out of ourselves to help others. It's simple. You know, we make such a big deal out of it sometimes that, you know, we waste too much time. I do. And I believe that that's what it's all about. And there's been other members of our fellowship that's talked about that. And the longer I'm clean, the more I understand how deep that is, you know, and how deep the steps are, how deep steps 1, 2, and 3 are, how deep it is for somebody to share their inventory with somebody. Isn't that deep? I mean, you know what I mean? To sit there and write as truthful as you can, you know, a complete moral inventory where you write it all down and then go to another individual and share it with them. That's powerful, you know, but one step sets you up for the next step spiritually. That's why when newcomers come here, first thing they want to do is make amends to everybody. You know, that's not the right way to do it. The amends step, we made a list in 8, and we made the amends in 9. The reason why they're set up like that is because the step before sets us up for that step, you know. So we're ready. We know who to make amends to. A lot of times we'll make our amends just to get the guilt off of us. You know, there's always a motive when we start doing stuff that quick. You know, I did things for motives, you know. So, you know, I paid attention to my sponsor, and he directed me on how to do things, and I listened most of the time. And some of the times I fought him, resisted, and every time I resisted, I always resisted the recovery that he was trying to give me. And it just took me a little bit longer to get there. If I would just would have listened. But Bob understands. He resisted too. I've seen it. Seen him in action many times. So, as time went on, man, I mean, there's been a lot of things that I've learned around here. My older son, when he was born, my ex-wife, his mother, she used to take these, different from me, she used to take these, they called them mini whites, and they were cut with strychnine. Before that, they had those big old cartwheels, those big bennies that you'd buy. You know, they looked like, they were big. Then they came out with all that New Tech shit, and they came out with these little small ones some guy made up in his garage. And she used to love them, man. She would take them and took them while she was pregnant. Nobody knew about, drinking alcohol is going to affect babies. Taking drugs is going to affect babies. Nobody knew all that. You know, smoking, anything, all the stuff they're coming out with now, man, is very new stuff. Well, she took them things, and Jimmy, when he was born, he kind of fell off the curve. Not dramatically, but enough to where it held him back. He couldn't get off the base. He would miss things, and there was all the receptors wasn't firing in his brain. And I think, and he became a drug addict. And like all of us, when we first started using drugs, I think probably it saved our lives at first. And I think he started using to save his life so he could cope with things as they were. And but 2 years ago, I got a phone call. But 3 o'clock in the morning, one of them phone calls, and I don't even know why I heard it. Usually I'll sleep through those. And it was the medical examiner from California Men's Institution up in San Luis Obispo. He had been up there for a robbery. And not a big robbery, drug addict robbery, stealing bicycles from kids. We were nuisances, weren't we? We were more of a nuisance man than anything else. And he would clothesline these kids when they was riding down the street and take their bikes and then go to the pawn shop and sell them. He got busted, man. They gave him a strike and put him in prison for robbery. And I can't tell you what was going through his mind that night. I can imagine, because he was a drug addict. And I blame this on the disease of addiction. Is that maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. I don't care. I just, it's the way I feel. So he had the disease, and he ran into some mental monsters that night, and he hung himself. And I don't even consider him dead. He was 30 years old, and he was a fine boy. And we went up there. He didn't die right away. He cut off the supply to his brain. They had him on a respirator. His mother came down from Kentucky. His brother came in from Kentucky. And we had to make a decision on what to do. Veto talked about taking his mother off the respirator. And I knew that was very, very difficult. But if you haven't experienced it, it is very, very difficult, especially your own blood. And here's my boy laying there, gasping for air, and all the machines are going, and they're pumping him full of this. His leg is shackled to the bed, because that's how they do it. You know, they don't care. They don't take the shackle off until you've gone. And 2 guards are standing there, constant watch over him. Got in an argument with them a couple of times, but that's senseless to get in an argument with a CDC officer, you know. And 3 days later, we decided to take him off the respirator, and 24 hours later, he died. And he's seen his dad clean, and he found a lot of new friends around here. I introduced him to a lot of people, and then he was a cool kid, man, and he went out and introduced himself to everybody else. You know, he wasn't afraid of people, and he'd dance, and he'd be at all the dances, and he'd have a great time, and he did a lot of good stuff and enjoyed himself. He was a good people. He was a charming boy. But you know, he felt like I felt. You know, self-worth was way low. When they were passing out self-esteem, just like me, he didn't get in line. And along with that problem that he had, you know, just brought him to the point where I guess he figured that that was as far as he was going to go. And along about that time, after he was just settling in from that, old baggage from many years ago, and there's a lot of people in this room here that have the same problem I had, and still do. Was hepatitis. I knew I'd had it. I had it years ago, but doctor told me halfway through in the late 70s that I had what they call a non-A, non-B. So I figured, well, the next one up should be C, and that's what they named it. And so I got the C hepatitis. And along with the methadone and drinking and all the stuff that I did, I think what happened is that I kind of hastened my liver transplant a little bit quicker. And I got sicker and sicker, and I had to quit working. Things started changing for me real rapidly. And 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with carcinoma or cancer of the liver. And there's no cancer in my family. Yeah, I already told you. My mother's still alive. She's 85 years old, and she's strong as an ox. But I come up with this cancer because of this hepatitis C. And we're back east at a clinic back there getting fixed up. And I got on their list back east, and they're giving me chemo treatments. I'm starting to lose my hair, and I'm starting to go through changes, and I'm starting to just, man, you know, things were just going upside down for me. And Diana was with me that first time, and she was, it was just so different, man. I can't tell you the things that was going on at that time, you know, and not to talk about the later stuff, but at that time. But you know what, man? You know what was constant? People would be calling us back there in Minnesota, calling up our motel room, talking to us, you know, calming us down, you know, talking to Diana, and things were, we knew that people was there. We went to a meeting, sloshed through the snow to get to a meeting, and meeting was just like Narcotics Anonymous meetings out here or in L.A., you know. And so there we were. And went back there 3 times, and they kept knocking out the tumor, and it kept coming back. And in January 7th of this year, my beeper went off and decided that UCLA had a liver for me. So we went down there, got me all set up for surgery, and I figured, man, it was going to be an in and out deal. No, I never realized what a liver surgery is, the transplant process is. And I thought, hey, you know, kind of minimizing things. If you talk to me about things, I minimize them right away. Diane always on my ass about that. You minimize too much. Why don't you just tell it like it is? I'm going to try it tonight, today. And I got the liver, and I never felt right, but I felt that if this is the way it's supposed to be, then this is the way it's supposed to be. But without the guidance that I had gotten on this program, I don't know how I would have acted. If I didn't have this program, one, I would have been down there by myself or not even gotten the liver at all. You know, I think that's probably the main deal. I would have kept running and never would have even gone to the doctor. I would have never had insurance. They always ask you first, transplant coming in? Yeah. How's your insurance? You know, I have God in my life. I took on a whole different plateau of praying. It went someplace else. I started praying differently. You know, I started praying more. And I can't tell you, I don't know if it was because I was close to death, but I'm going to tell you something. I started getting real grateful about things. They transplanted the liver, and it lasted exactly two and a half months, I think. And when I went upside down, I went upside down. This, I turned as yellow as the most yellowest thing that you can think of. Your shirt. My head, everything. My feet looked like shoe boxes. I gained so much water was in my system I couldn't walk. I'd fall down. I couldn't think right. Ammonia was in my system, and people would come up to see me and I didn't remember them. I couldn't remember names. You know, Bob would come up and say, "Hi, it's Bob." I've known Bob for 30 years, man. I'd look at him like, yeah, Bob. You know, and I couldn't remember names. I couldn't remember places. I was going in and out. I fell out in my wife's arms. It was a horrendous time in our lives. It seemed like nothing was going right. It seemed like everything seemed like every other day something else would happen, man. My wife talked about it yesterday about, was it testing? Was it testing our faith? Or she felt like that. Sometimes, I don't know if I felt like it was testing our faith. I still kept the concept that, you know what, life just shows up. It showed up for my son. I don't blame God. I don't care. I don't pick up the phone and call God and say, boy, you're a dirty dog for letting that happen. I don't do that. He's way too powerful for that, you know. And for me to have used, because of my son's death, what kind of legacy would that have been? For me to go out and take a shot, you know, because my son died because I was so depressed. You know, what was expected of me, man, I did. That's expected of myself. Because I continued working the steps of this program, and I continued doing what was suggested of me. And I continued to be in a service. And I got the second transplant on the 24th of April, almost 100 days ago. Like the 100-day battle. Sounds like something in Korea or something. Something like happened in Hamburger Hill or something. And about 100 days ago, a boy died. And because Diana is a nurse, she gets all the inside scoop, and she's always hot-nosing around the hospital. So she finds out, we're not supposed to know, but she found out who it came from. And he was a good Christian boy and strong and 16 years old. And they transplanted that liver in me. And as far as the liver goes, I've never felt better. I feel great, you know. I'm weak as hell. That's why I'm sitting down. That's why I explained the chair to you. 100 days ago, I couldn't walk. It took everything out of me, everything. I had nothing left. My legs, I used to have big thighs, you know what I mean, with big knees, and, you know, the days are over with, man. You know, I'm match me up with a canary now. You know, I got to start doing some leg push-ups or something. Bob looking at me like, don't you touch those leg push-ups. I won't. Anyway, you know what, man? The skill of the surgeons, you know, sewing up all the arteries and doing all the things they did is one thing. But I'm going to tell you something, and this I believe with all my heart, that all you guys praying for Ham when I'm getting my liver is what got me through. I believe nothing else in that. That's what I believe. The prayers and the concern and the willingness, man, to help me, help my family, be there for me, you know, was just unsurmountable. My brother, as soon as he found out that I was sick, the second time, dropped everything, his job, everything, and came down. Stayed for 3 weeks. His wife, who has a practice in Sebastopol, got people to cover for her practice. She's a chiropractor, and came down for 2 weeks. Bill Ryan was there every day. Kathy would fly in from Phoenix, you know, and was there with me. My sponsor would call and come down, and he was there with me. Sydney would sit out in the waiting room because you couldn't get everybody in ICU, and she would sit there along with 3 or 4 other ladies, and they would sit and talk, and if they couldn't get in, they would go home. They just wanted to be there, you know. And I just, you know, I mean, the example of these things, man, and the friendships and the things that happen around here is far beyond my comprehension. Because when I got here, I had no idea that you could have friends like that. I had no idea that people could come into your lives and be the type of people that they are. And I had no idea that I could be the type of person I am today. That was a dream. It was like some fleeting dream, man. And today I've really turned in. I'm not turning into. I'm turned into a person that is. Something's happened to me. It's not because I was getting ready to kick the bucket either. Something's happened, and it's because I worked the program, Narcotics Anonymous. I worked these steps. I've worked them hard. Bobby had to tell me quit writing. I'm not kidding you. He told me stop writing. That's it for you. I used to. I'd come up with paperwork, man, and he would go, "Ay, ay." Bob, I thought I'd write on the 12th step. Who told you to write on the 12th step? He says, having had a spiritual awakening and carry this message, I still suffer. I said, oh. I said, I thought I'd write about it. He said, I'll tell you when to write again. When I called him my peer while he was in Florida, and he packed in about 3 hours and rushed home immediately because he knew that all his sponsees were going sideways. We were out here sponsoring ourselves because he wasn't getting a lot of phone calls. Well, Bobby can't afford the phone call. He rushed back out and put us all on writing assignments. I did finish the first one he gave me. I did finish another inventory. I'm still stuck on 6 and 7, and I'm still stuck on it. I haven't turned it in yet. I told him, I said, you know, in the hospital they give you medication. Say something about medication. You want to know anything about medication? There's only one page in our book that I can. I'm not a. Oh, on page 83 it says this, and on page 94 it says, I know page 98. You read that. If you're having trouble in that area, you know, clinical depression, man, is something where the guys in the walkers are passing you up going to the chow hall. That's when you have clinical depression. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about just being depressed. And I'm depressed 8, 9 years around this program working these steps. I'm not a doctor, but I remember what they told me when I got here. You don't take nothing. So I didn't. I haven't. So it says that right there on page 98. Anybody cross the line? You know you crossed the line. That's all I got to say about that. In the hospital, they have to give you morphine because it's a very painful operation. And it's, I guess, probably one of the biggest operations a man can go through. And so they gave me morphine. And I started writing my 6th step. Bobby says, he said, when did you write part of this? I said, when I was in the hospital. And he says, when did you write? He says, when? And I says, right after a couple of days after I just didn't have anything to do. He says, you was on morphine? He says, tear that shit up. He says, you're starting over. I said, okay. See, I can understand that. You know, I don't know why I just wanted to write, I guess. Anyway. We pulled through that. And with the support of everybody in these rooms. And I'm alive today because of the prayers. I truly believe that. And my sanity was kept in check by the work, by the 12 steps and my higher power. And talking to people. And now I'm going to talk about the last 100 days. Things have been very difficult for me. This thing took so much out of me that constantly shaking. There's a lot of anti-rejection medication that you have to take. I don't take it, I die. And it does things to you. Makes you shake, makes you swell up. I don't know if that's exactly what makes me feel the way I feel up here. But I'll tell you the way I feel. I've never felt so inadequate in my life. I've never felt so powerless in my life. I don't like feeling incredibly powerless. I know there's a lot of things I'm powerless over. And I know that I should be thinking, the way that I should be thinking is I'm powerless over everything. That way it gives me a blanket deal. But as addicts, you know. Most of us don't. I don't. I want to think that I can still do things. I've been feeling very inadequate, very powerless, very vulnerable. I keep thinking, man, you know how I was talking about how you think of crazy shit? I keep thinking somebody's going to come up and punch me in my stomach. You know how we do that? I do that. I think that. And then, what am I going to do? Should I start carrying a gun? You know, just in case? You know, should I start packing a knife again? Should I start doing that? Just to protect myself, you know? And I was talking to Bobby last night because yesterday I opened up my mouth again and said something that was stupid to my wife about some stupid jealousy deal that I thought that I was past, you know, and it pops up again. I was talking to Bobby about it, and he said, I told you, if you keep your mouth shut half the time, you would be in less trouble half the time. And he says, you know what's happening, brother, is that you feel so inadequate and so you've been beat down so much has been taken out of you, that you've been left like this, that and so left with this no self-confidence, and everything is like rolling around my head. He said that what's happening is that you're trying to gain control. He says you're trying to put everything in a nice, neat box and put it all back in control again. He says, because that's what you do. And you know what I thought about it? And that's exactly what I do. When I feel inadequate, when I feel powerless, when I feel like I don't have control, you know, if I'm not on stuff, you know, the first thing I do is I try to put it all away in a nice, neat box and set it up and have it look real good, you know. And I can't control you. I can't control my wife. She's uncontrollable. I get a headache trying to control her. And that's what I've been doing. And the more I try to control, the crazier I get. The crazier I get. And Bobby says, you got to give yourself a break. He says, you're coming out of this thing. You're acting like it hasn't been a big thing. And it has been a big thing. You almost died. If I hadn't gotten the liver by that day, I would have been dead the next day. Everything, all my functions had shut down. My kidneys had shut down. My pancreas had shut down. Everything was down. And I was getting ready. That's how a person dies. This goes, that slows up, pretty soon that goes, this stops. All of a sudden, it's like you're crossing over the river. So, once again, guess what I did? You know, I called my sponsor in his room, and I talked to him about it. What a miracle that is. The reason I say that is when you expose the disease of addiction, when you expose the defects that are rolling around in your head, they can't live by the light. They can't do it. And as soon as you shed light on it, man, it's like it's like moss that grows in the shady side of the tree. It just can't grow in the sun. A fungus of some sort. And I'm not telling you anything new. If you pick up the book and read about defects, it's right there. It says that. And it also says if you don't become humble, you'll become humiliated. You know, and I've been humiliated mucho times around here because of my defects. I used to feel as though I had that penitentiary idea, man, that I had to confront everybody on everything. Because if I didn't, you was going to think that I was a punk. You know, and I was into that, what I had to do. And I would walk around here in these rooms sometimes, somebody would look at me. And if I wasn't right that day, I might confront them. You know, dumb shit. But you know what, it was important to me at that time. And Bobby worked with me on that and told me how we bring this big bag of stuff in here with us, and that they don't die overnight, that it takes years and years. So if you're thinking you've been here a year or so and everything should be hunky-dory, It took you a long time to get here. I walked in these rooms 36 years old, hooked like a dog. I was kicking in the rooms, and people took me under their wing. And Bobby took me to my first meeting. I was his barber. I was his barber in the penitentiary, and I always had a lot of homeboys in there. There's always about 30 or 40 of us in there, and none of them thought that they had to pay for haircuts. Like, how was I going to live? I never got money from home. So some of them, man, would pay. Some of them, man, put it on the cuff. Bobby always paid. He always gave me a pack. When I cut his hair, man, he's my dear, dear friend. And he's been right there for me through this whole journey. My dear friend Bill has been right there with me. Our lives ran very parallel with his mother. And my family, being my dad being so old and my mother being so handicapped with the deafness that you know, the shame and the guilt you go through, and then being there trying to be there for them, and then not being able to be there for them at all. When my father died, I walked into the hospital room, stayed 4 minutes, and my mother's going through the vigil, Southern Baptist, crying, and she was in there alone with my father, and not 2 of her sons stayed. I was hooked like a dog, you know, and that's why I talk about this is a me disease. You know, I felt bad, but I was getting sick. And when he died, I was not there. And when we buried him, I stayed as least time as I could, and my brother did the same. We both shot out and got some stuff, because that's what we did. That's what drug addicts do. And I don't do that shit today. I don't want a man, somebody comes up to me and tells me, Ham, you got 1 hour to live. I don't want to feel as though I got to run to that telephone, pick it up and call somebody and say, geez, I'm sorry I did this to you, man, back like 1958. I don't want to do that. You know, I want my shit to be straight. I want it to be wired tight. I don't want to miss anything. And guess what? It's all in the steps. It's all in the steps. Everything's right there. The instructions, very simple. Don't put no twists on the steps. Don't put no extra shit in there. You know, don't read them differently. I did. It's our habit. We have selective reading and we have selective hearing. First step, man, it took me a long time to understand that there was 2 more parts to the I am an addict. I admitted I was an addict. There's 2 other things it talks about being unmanageable and being powerless. I never seen them, man, for years. I heard it talked about every day. I never realized, man, the dynamics of that. Such a surrender, man, to realize, man, you are unmanageable. Life is completely unmanageable for you. You know, I said, oh. And then having God came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I was crazy, man, insane, you know. And there's guys in this room here that seen me on my first day walking in here. Thank God for them that they were here, because if they just split, you know, it's like there wouldn't be anybody here for us to see. It's like there's some old timers in the room, and they were here when I got here. Thank God for them, you know, because they showed me the way. And that's how it's all done around here. Okay. I guess I'm going to wrap it up. Usually I know exactly when to stop. I know exactly when to let it go. I had a lot to say today. And Bobby says, when you're done, you're done. So I'm not out of steam. I got a lot more to say, but I'm done. And I just want to thank everybody for listening to me, and I hope that I've said something that that you'll remember and take home with you. If I hadn't said anything that you can remember, please remember this. You can get through anything anything, just stick around, go to meetings, have a sponsor, have trust, and have a higher power. Work the steps, and you'll get through it. I'm here to tell you that. If you're here for the first day or the first week and you think, I ain't going to get you through that shit, you know, it ain't going to happen. I'm here to tell you it will, because I've been through some stuff. And there's other guys in this room that's been through stuff, and women. And I'm just very grateful and feel very privileged to be part of this fellowship. You're all very beautiful to me. I can pick up the phone anytime and call you. I got brothers and sisters here. And I just, very grateful. Very grateful. Thank you very much for hearing me, and thanks very much for asking me to come up.